I heard a sermon one time where the man that was preaching talked about when he was a little child and he went to Maggie Valley, North Carolina. Anybody ever been there? I have. It's beautiful, isn't it? And there was a ghost town there at the time, and he went painting for gold. And he couldn't wait. He was 7 years old. He was there with his family, and there he found it. A big gold nugget. He washed it out, and he had it. He went running to his mom and said, "Look at the gold I found." He said, "I just want to tell you, Mom, you don't have to worry about my allowance anymore." And he said, "You don't have to worry. In fact, I'm not doing any chores either. I'll just hire them done." He had it all figured out what he wanted to do with that gold. And his mother came and she looked at the gold and she said, "Well, I've got some bad news. That's fool's gold." And isn't it so easy to be fooled by something we think is valuable or important, and we scratch the surface and we discover something, it's not near as important or as valuable as we thought it was. And as today, as we begin to talk about our journey of putting God first, we're talking about naming our idols and thinking about those idols that we put in, that we think are so important. I mean, we've just lifted them up and they're one of the most important things in our life, but when we really scratch the surface, we just discover something. They're just fool's gold underneath. They're not really what's important in our lives and in what we're doing. Today's scripture, especially the first one, as we think about the scriptures today and the way the people of Israel, even after being rescued by God, quickly go for fool's gold, don't they? They really want something and they can't get it, and so they make a god to be among them. They make that god out of gold. And it's so easy to do, and it's so easy for us to pick on these people and wonder what was wrong with them. Sometimes we have to think like, weren't you getting the point? Weren't you understanding it? And I know there are people here today that wish I would spend the next 20 minutes talking about those people, but I'm not going to do that. I want to talk about us. Because that's who the message is for today. It is for us. How do we relate to these people? How are we like these people who built the golden calf, who made an idol to worship among them? And I think that's what we have to look at today. How do we do it? What do we do? I read an interesting book called Strange Gods by Elizabeth Scalia. And she says, are we so different than these people? Don't we do the same things? Don't we erect or build, if not physically, at least in some way in our lives, these things that we worship and put in the place of God? And it's so important to recognize that. So this message is about us. She would say that we can put anything in the place of God. We can put love in the place of God. We can put anger in the place of God. We can put ambition. All of these things become idol worship. They become idol worship when we attach ourselves to something other than God. God's presence is blocked and disconnected from our awareness because we can see God no longer because we are so laser focused on the idol that we've built in our lives. It's really important that we notice that because I really believe there are so many things that become idols today, and it's so easy to pull us away from the true worship of God. And there are just so many things out there, and how do we deal with it? How do we handle it? It can be anything from some idea to prosperity to success to the future. All of those things that have us worshiping them instead of the God of the future. And so you see, the problem of worshiping false gods is not just limited to other people. I mean, I think we're very good at that, by the way, aren't we? I mean, none of us worship false gods, right? When you go with that, it's always everybody else. It's what you do wrong, and then I can point that out, by the way, and there are people that are very good at pointing that out for us. And they will tell us what we're doing wrong. But the truth is, it's not just about me saying what you're doing, it's about me looking at what I'm doing. What am I putting in the place of God? Because I struggle like everyone else. What do I put in between me and God that I can no longer see God because I've done that? And those are the things that we don't have the luxury to look down on other people. We must look at ourselves. One of my favorite authors, Brian McLaren, says, sometimes we even make idols out of what we believe. And that becomes more important than God or more important than reality because we've believed it, and so that's all we need now. And this can take us away from our true faith. When I was in seminary, I can remember reading a book by H. Reinhold Niebuhr, in which he said this, that when we get away from God, we fail to place God on the throne of our lives. You know, God, we say that we worship, but we don't put God first in our own lives. It's so important that we recognize that. And back to what Elizabeth Scalia said, and I love this list, by the way. I want you to listen to this list of just some of the things she mentioned that we might make an idol out of. Anger, past injuries, praise, pride, possessions, politics, poetry, my favorite one here, film adaptations of Jane Austen novels, family, hate, careers, reality shows, fitness, food, social media, pets. By the way, pets can do that. Rightness about what we believe. All those things can replace God. We can put them in front of who we're supposed to be worshiping. And it's so easy to do if we're not careful. So one of the first things I want us to think about today is name the idols you have in your life. That's where we begin to get control over them, when we can admit it, when we can name it, when we can say, oh, I went down the wrong path. I put this event, this thing, this person in my life much more important than who God is. I want us to prayerfully consider that this morning, because God will help us, but we'll be tempted at every turn to go back to the way we've done it. It's just, so much easier to stay in the pattern of the way we have always done things. But God is pulling us and helping us move down the path. You see, idols sometimes, and I want to say this, are inherently not bad. I mean, we have relationships with people, we have friends, we have things we believe. Those are not inherently bad. But it's when we begin to worship them instead of worshiping the living God that problems happen. You know, here was the problem, and God knew it from the beginning. God's always known it. That's why we have these wonderful stories from the Old Testament to remind us that people are people, and people mess up. And so God reminds us that idols may be pretty, they may look real, but they're not real. They cannot hear our prayers. They cannot give us real peace. Whether it's a statue, a job, a salary, a dream house, it's not real. Only the living God is real. And so as we begin to set priorities in our life, as we begin to look at what we're called to do, it's so significant and so important that we look at our lives today and say, oh, if I'm going to put God first, what idols are in the way of me, Jim, putting God first? I have to look at mine. I don't need to look at yours. I'm counting on you to look at yours. What do you do that's important in your life? I've heard it many times that what we set as our priorities, no matter what else we say, how we spend our money, how we spend our energy, and how we spend our time really show what we believe. We can say whatever we want. We can say anything. But where we spend our money, our time, and our energy show where the important things in our life are. It's important that we recognize and notice that. It's not that we can't enjoy other things. I enjoy a lot of life. I mean, I enjoy getting on my Harley Davidson and taking off up into the mountains. And I love that. But I don't put that before God. And God has to be in the center of my life if everything's in its proper place. I want to tell a quick story. This just kind of popped into my head. I've never told this story to anyone, ever. And it popped into my head as I was sitting there today. About 3 years ago, I went to San Francisco on a little conference and then mini vacation while I was there. And on one particular day, I was actually wearing one of my Vietnam veteran shirts. And I went into this hotel, and I went into the lobby of the hotel, and I was actually looking for a restroom. And I went into the hotel, and as I came out of the restroom, this man came up to me about my age, and he was Vietnamese. And he saw my shirt, and he started talking to me. and told me how he had served alongside Americans in Vietnam, and he was here alive today because of that. And he got tears in his eyes, and I didn't know what to do. And after we talked and hugged a little, I started to walk away. And then I saw a gift shop there. And you know what I decided to do in a moment? I went into the gift shop and bought a shirt. Not for him, but for me. And I took off my shirt there in the lobby of the hotel, and I gave it to him. Because it's so important. The things that we love, they're really more important when we can give them away. And giving him that shirt was maybe one of the biggest things I'd ever done in my life. And it was so important for me. How do you act out what's important for you? Do you hang on to it, or do you give it away? Do you share it with others? Paul Tillich says that everyone has an ultimate concern in their life. I mean, it's an ultimate concern. It can be about family, it can be about security, it can be about safety, it can be about anything that you want it to be. And this is what we place our hopes in. This is what we give our best efforts towards. But Tillich would say, if our ultimate concern is anything less than God, it's an idol. So where do we put what's most important to us? And how do you decide? You know, maybe if it really came down to it and we were forced to make a choice, we would understand what's most important to us. And so I'm going to close up with sharing something about that today. Fred Craddock, one of the greatest preachers of the last century, I heard him preach, then I bought one of his books called Craddock Stories. And he tells a true story about a missionary that he had met that had served in China and was serving there. They'd served a number of years when the communists came into power. And the communists ushered out all the missionaries. And they came to their house one day, their family was there, and they said, "You're leaving tomorrow. You can take 200 pounds of stuff with you." And they looked and they said, "How can we limit what's important? That's the 200 pounds. I mean, we've collected things over the years here. We've got things we bought that we treasure. We have things we brought with us to start with that we treasure. We have gifts that people that have come into the faith while we were here have given us. How do we limit it to 200 pounds?" They had to decide what was important. And so they carefully found everything they thought was of value. And they packed it into bags, and they weighed it carefully, and it came out to exactly 200 pounds. And they thought, man, we're leaving a lot, but we've got something to take with us. The next day, they showed up to escort them to be sent away from China. And they asked them, "Have you weighed everything? Are you ready to go?" And they said, "Yeah, we think we're ready to go. We've weighed everything." And the guard looked at them, and they said, "Have you weighed your children?" You want to know how to make a decision about what's important in your life? Think about that. Think about it today. What is your ultimate concern? What's most important to you? What's keeping you from giving all of who you are in living and giving to God? Take that to God today. And ask God to move you away from the idols of your life and to move you into a relationship with God that always begins by putting God first. May it be so for me, and may it be so for you. Thanks be to God. Amen.